All right, tonight we are excited to welcome fellow Woodside community member and all-around interesting guy, Jamis MacNiven. Jamis and his wife, as many of us know, are longtime Skylandians dating back to the Carter administration. Jamis has done numerous tech talks, so make sure you check those out. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to check out the YouTube link we shared with everyone earlier this week, Breakfast at Bucks, with American historian Stephen Shapin. It's a really interesting talk. And let's see, Bucks opened in 1991, and since then, Forbes has called it the best business restaurant. NPR referred to it as a tech bellwether. And I could go on with the accolades that both Jamis and Bucks have received, but that's why Jamis is here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamis.
Great. Okay. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the economy. I want to use a fine-tooth comb and go through why I think we should go back to the gold standard. I think we'll talk about zombies instead. This is an ad we were about to run. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet. Okay. Hold on a second here. I've got to share my screen. There we go. This is an ad we were about to run in the Almanac because we were so busy. We were trying to convince people not to come. And they started in March, they didn't. Yeah, so we, after 28 years, turned the restaurant over to our kids, our sons, Tyler, who lives on Kings Mountain, and Rowan, who lives on Skyline, and Dylan, the older brother. And so now they're running it as best they can through these somewhat troubled times. So I thought we'd go in the front door here and have a look around. So I'm going to do just that. Somebody came and built this beautiful video model of Bucks, and we can take a tour through the whole place, and I can tell you some of the funny stuff that went on. We kicked the doors open in 1991, and Margaret and I, we had really no idea how to run a restaurant. We'd been in the construction business, and I'd built a lot of restaurants. Built the Hard Rock Cafe on Van Ness in San Francisco, and built a number of banks. I turned banks into restaurants, and actually some restaurants into banks. Actually, it's funny. I went to Berkeley in the late 60s and 70s, and I was standing on a corner when somebody was breaking the windows out of a bank. I wasn't breaking them, but I was standing there. And then about 8 years later, I was there working on that very same building, turning it into a restaurant. So it's funny how things come around. Well, as we come in the door here, there's our iconic Statue of Liberty. And it reminds me of the time a woman came in and she said, "Oh, I can't believe you painted it green." I said, "Well, you know, the real one is green." She goes, no, it's not. And
Jamis, we're still only seeing the ad.
You're still seeing the ad?
Yeah.
You are sharing your new share. Okay. We're just.
Do you want me to help?
Yeah, help me here, Tyler. They're only seeing the ad.
I got you.
Okay.
Brother to the rescue.
Help, tech help.
How are we doing now?
Great.
Are we in Bucks?
Yep.
Okay.
Totally in Bucks.
Go back out to the front door here. I'll take. Thank you, T. Well, I'm glad someone told me before the end. Well, anyway, here's the model as I was describing, and this is an amazing model. This is the whole shebang here. So find our way back. Well, there's from the top, and exploring the 3D space. So again, we're going to try to come in the front door. There we are, trapped behind at the cash register. Navigate around here. Well, we'll just start anywhere. Actually, this seat here, you can see this seat right now. This is where Bill Gates was sitting in the mid-90s, and he was fighting with another fellow over here for the check, and Bill won, which was only appropriate, I thought. So many businesses had their early meetings at Bucks. We became really well known for that. As a matter of fact, this table right here is where Hotmail was founded in 1995. Sabir Bhatia and Steve Jurvetson got together, and he just whispered to Steve, free email with an advertising tag. And that really led to the whole notion of email that doesn't cost you anything and advertising tags. And they sold that company to Microsoft for $400 million back when that seemed like a lot of money. Of course, now if you sell your firm for $400 million, people just laugh at you. But then it seemed pivotal. So that was a pretty tremendous experience to witness. Here's the Roy Rogers painting. Originally, I had planned to call the place Triggers, and I went down and I met Roy Rogers, who was everything to me as a little kid, and he was as gracious in older age as I always hoped he would be. There's my son Dylan, who's 10 years old. He wanted to be in the movie, so we stuck him in. Does anybody remember the name of Roy's dog? Roy's dog, and there's Dale Evans is in the background and her dog. So many of you will remember that this was this sweet family who, you know, they sang and played guitars and every so often would shoot a bad guy. And what's not to love, right? So Bucks is absolutely crammed full of little bits of arcana. Down here is a collection of Japanese yen, Japanese dollars that were produced for the Philippines for their supposed occupation. They look just like American money, but it's in pesos. So it's Japanese pesos for the Philippines. And I just love to collect little bits of arcana. This long frame here contains Cracker Jack prizes from 1903 to about 1945, until some kid had the bad taste of choke and they took all the fun prizes out. So I'm gonna wander around and show you some of our artifacts, because the people are gone, but the memories of them stay. Here's a fun piece. This is, oops. This is, come back here. See, people might get seasick as I'm moving around here. This is a picture of Warren Buffett with me, and Warren handing me his wallet. And here is a wallet. And is it indeed Warren's wallet? Well, okay, the truth is, it isn't Warren's wallet. It says right down here, this is not Warren's wallet. But nobody sees that. They see me with the wallet, the picture. So I put this frame up and with the wallet in it, and I got a curious letter. This was back in 99 when things were really go in Silicon Valley. And it was a letter from Warren saying he'd seen an article in the Almanac of me posing with this wallet. He said, I remember we took our picture together, but if somebody sent you a wallet, it was so sweetly phrased, if somebody sent you a wallet purporting it to be mine, they were very much in error. I've had two wallets in 25 years, and one's in my pocket, and the other I sold at auction for $300,000. So I sent him a note saying, oh, you caught me. And then I put the disclaimer below. And we actually became pen pals for a while, would trade humorous letters. We were, in the late 90s, the only ones still writing letters, I think. So I always claim, yeah, Warren's a friend of mine. Really wonderful, respectable guy. Here's a piece that no one in 25 years since I've had it ever commented on. It's one of my favorite pieces. It's a sculpture of by Arthur and Lucia Matthews, who were really significant California artists. And they, they have a lot of pieces in the Oakland Museum. I don't know if I can zero in on it, but it is got gorilla trees and flowers of all different scales and different metals, and it's an absolutely beautiful piece. But curiously enough, never provoked any comment in all those years. More comments about the hat here. Oh, well, let's move over to this table here. This is actually a pretty significant table here. This is the table that Tesla was founded at. And when I say founded, I mean, that's where the money got committed to the company. So Elon Musk will tell you that he founded Tesla, and he's a dear fellow, but he did not found Tesla. He he came aboard over a year later. Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenty, two Woodside guys, they founded Tesla, and they got their first money here. And as they were here day after day, they asked me and other people if we would be interested in putting in $50,000 each, just so they could get some names. They considered me a name. I don't know. They could get some names to then take to the venture capitalists and raise some money. So I rode around in one of the prototypes, and it seemed like a loser deal to me. So I bought, I think I bought Webvan instead, another company that just disappeared with the flow in 2000. This is a fun dress. This is a, sorry for scooting around so much. This is a dress that was made for the publisher's wife of the Boston Globe to go to a party at the Vanderbilts in, I can't remember the date, in the 1890s. And it's actually printed on the press of the newspaper. And she created such a stir with this that in the society pages, they had a little bit of a war, and she was not asked back. And the Vanderbilts at the time were the richest people in the world. They were the Bezos of the era. So yeah, moving along here, I like to put up the biggest and the most ridiculous. Here's complete with 1 year of lost time without an accident in Ohio. Is that Iowa? No one's really sure. Here's the world's largest Swiss Army knife. And we've got collectible coins. Oh, this is actually, if someone were to ask me what the most important thing to me is, it would be this. This is the sawfish shark snout. And this was probably painted with pictographs in around the 1860s. My grandfather bought it from Jack London's widow's estate. And this was collected by Jack London and his wife Charmian in the South Seas in about 1906, when they had their ill-fated trip on the Snark. So it's both famous for him having owned it and because it's just a terrific piece. Oh, Linus Pauling's widow gave me these. She was the wife of one of only, I think, 3 people to win 2 Nobel Prizes. He was a local fellow. He worked over in Menlo Park. He won the Peace Prize and medicine, I think, or chemistry for his work with vitamin C. This is, somebody gave me this. This is the porta-pooch. If you can see how it's used here. It's, that was considered provocative at the time. You could carry your dog as carry-on luggage. I had this license plate, not cool, on an old Lincoln once, and I gave that car to my kid, Dylan, and he immediately took it off and put a generic plate on. And I said, but Dylan, that's funny. I mean, this big Lincoln is not cool. He goes, well, to you, it's not cool. To me, it's actually, I mean, to you, it's funny, but to me, it's actually not cool. Oh, here's a piece I haven't looked at in a long time. These are samples of trim you would use on the bottom of window shades and lamp shades from the 1920s. It's a salesman's sample book from the Sig Heller Company. And a really elderly man came in once. He said, you know, I knew Siggy Heller in Manhattan back in the 30s. So he was close to 100 years old. You know, one of the great things about Bucks is that we saw people of every age. I've got to show you this table here, because this is, people say, what's the most interesting thing that ever happened? And I've met kings and prime ministers and famous actors. It was right here at this table. There was a woman sitting here, and it was a birthday party. And she was dressed up like a cowgirl with a little red hat. She had 6 guns, little toy 6 guns on. Her head barely cleared the edge of the table, and the whole place was rocking. And I said, so, well, I think when a woman gets a certain age, she's proud of her age. I said, so it's your birthday, how old are you? And she pulled out her 6 guns, and she raised them in the air. She said, I'm 101 years old today, and pretended to shoot her guns. And it was just incredibly cute. Then in the front door, about an hour later, over here in front, a friend of mine walked in with 2-week-old twins. And In fact, he'd married one of my servers who I introduced him to. And I thought, this is the best job imaginable. I get to wander around all day long talking to amazing people and get paid for it. And, for many years, we were well paid. So continuing, I was standing here in this hallway once and with a fella, and everybody was gathered around here for a press conference, and there were a lot of cameras going. And there was a woman sitting here who had been a fashion model, and now she was quite famous. Her name was Carla Bruni, and I was standing next to her husband, and I said, I can't believe it. You're the president of France, and they're totally ignoring you. He said, oh, I'm used to it. Carla, she eats the camera. And so I was standing with Sarkozy, who now is, I understand, on his way to prison, probably. So, so much for that. In fact, this table, because it gets bigger, it's the one that expands. Many of you may have sat there with family parties, is where the bigger groups would come. I met once Shimon Peres. Tyler was there for that, and who was Prime Minister of Israel, and that was a pretty big deal. But actually, at this table here, or at this seat here, all around the table, these 4 Russian generals came in once, and they were the head guys for the army in Russia. General Ivashov was the #1 guy, and I sat here and he sat here, and we're chatting away. His English was perfect. And I said, so what does the head of the Russian army do on a day-to-day basis? And he thumped me in the chest and said, I'm the one to put the pins in the map. And I thought, oh, that's so vivid. And I said, any around here? And he conferred with one of his people, and he turned to me and he said, the San Mateo Dam. And that really got my attention. Well, he gave me his business card, and he said, if you're ever in Russia, look me up. So I immediately made plans to go to Russia and look him up. And because I had a notion that I should have a spacesuit hanging in the sky here. And so we went to his office, and he was not there. And they said, he is elsewhere. And so I said, okay. But we then found where the spacesuits were made. They're actually made in Moscow. This is the Sokol suit, still used today by the Russians. The Russians, they don't change stuff. They're still shooting their rockets off with men in them from the same platform that Yuri Gagarin was launched from. And I was there last year at the launch site in Kazakhstan. Well, we went out to the place where these are made. We had a translator, and we banged on the door in the middle of winter, and a door in the bigger door opened up, and a fellow stuck his head through, and he said in Russian, what do you want? And we showed the general's card, and we said, the general said you'd sell us a spacesuit. And they said, well, okay. And we went in, and they sold me a spacesuit. It took a couple of days, but there it is. And my granddaughter's coming. She's going to poke buttons here. This is a fun piece here. These are puppets of flying nuns here. And I always wanted a squadron of angry flying nuns. So I put an advertisement in Craigslist, and I immediately got beautiful drawings of flying nuns. And I hired this one artist, and she made these lyrical but rather angry nuns. And in fact, they got such scowls on their faces that I hung them in my office for about a year. I was afraid if I ran into some real nuns, I would make them unhappy. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to finally hang them. And eventually, a nun did come in, and she looked up and she said, "You got it about right. That's about right." Well, this brings us to this piece here. This is a red bug. This is a vehicle much like a go-kart, but it was actually a street legal car built in the 19-teens. It's over 100 years old, and it was marketed to children. It cost $200, but a Model T cost $300. So it didn't sell very well because it was really underpowered and would only run on a flat surface. There are only about 18 of these that have been identified as still existing, and one of them happens to be at the house right next door to Buck's. And there's a vast car collection next door. Oh, here's a fun piece. This was given to me on my 50th birthday. Who doesn't love a squirrel riding a motorcycle? It's kind of essential to any restaurant, I think. Coming around the corner here Let's see if we can find the floor again. I got the carpet the same way I got the nuns. I advertised on Craigslist, and I said I need an alligator farm, and an artist in about a day designed this wonderful interlocking carpet here. This carpet has had over 3 million trips across the front and still looks new. It's made out of wool. It's incredibly durable. This thing could literally last 50 years. And some people have never seen that. Another thing some people have really not looked at is the mural up here. There's a 110-foot long mural wrapping the whole upper part of the restaurant, depicting small town America in the 50s, which was sort of my era. And it was painted on panels and installed later. Oh, while we're up here in the sky, let's look at this. This is a hammerhead shark, which has been modified with the skin of an F-14. It's got, it's hard to, I got to go back to the floor to navigate here. It's got teeth from a taxidermy supply house that would be used with a lion, human eyes, and a lion's tongue. So it's sort of a hybrid, as you see. You know, I spent so long creating these things. I did a lot of the artwork myself, but I collaborated with a lot of artists. This was a collaboration of several artists and myself. This is also a piece that nobody's ever mentioned. This is a woman in a half shell wrapped in a snake. She's got ruby slippers on her head and wrapped in pearls and all sorts of fancy jewelry and a rhinestone skull cap, and rather demurely they're placed in the shell. But once things are up above the sight line, they tend not to be noticed so much. Here's a newer piece. This is about 8 years old. These are, if you've been there and looked at the sign, these are 10 of the great redwoods of California, the tallest ones. This one here, named Luna, is the tree that Julia Butterfly spent over 2 years in. She was the inspiration for this. She spent 2 years tree sitting to save this mammoth tree from being cut down. And it was people like that that felt that these trees were a public good and belonged to all of us. Really shouldn't be cut into decking for some giant lumber company. And I totally support that. I think they were entirely correct. So let's see what else we have. We have this. This is not a true story. Almost everything is true, but this is just one I made up because it was fun. And this is a snake skin, and the story is written here that underneath that it tried to crush and consume young Timothy Smytheboat Whiting on his trip to the Amazon in 1904. And this is the elder Timothy Smytheboat Whiting, who has steel teeth and was not eaten by the snake. So a fanciful story, but with a true one underneath. This is a narwhal tusk that I was given by the president of Iceland many years ago. And it is still property of the people of Iceland because it's not legal to import marine mammal parts to the United States. So it's not really mine. It's on loan. It's been on loan for 20 years. The narwhal is a whale with a giant tusk, which is one of the eye teeth growing out of its upper mandible. And it was collected by the Vikings, and then the idea of the unicorn was popular in Europe, and it was used for two things. One, it was an aphrodisiac, and secondly, it was used to detect poison in food. So kings would make drinking cups out of it, and theoretically it had that use. So really great marketing, I think. We'll move. You know, this is funny. This is one of the earliest things I installed, and these are just fake rubber teeth, and probably one of our 3 or 4 most commented on items, because the kids just love it, because they say, what's it with these teeth? And it's simply, you know, carnival rubber teeth here are, many of you, if you're my age, will remember these skates. These are the skates we used to clamp onto our hard shoes with the skate key. And some of you may have gone steady with somebody using a skate key as a symbol of your love. I didn't, but I do remember that distinctive sound of crunch, crunch, crunch on the pavement with these steel wheels with rather crude bearings. Crawling around here, what do we got over here? These are pictures of the airship that used to be at Moffett Field. And the Akron was the pride of the Navy in the 1930s. In fact, the people of Sunnyvale gave all that land, about 1,000 acres, to the federal government for $1 if they would bring the airship program there in 1932. And so they built this ship and they built the giant hangar and they brought it. And the program only lasted 18 months because it crashed off the Big Sur coast. But this is one of the reasons Silicon Valley is here today. And that's because around this naval air station sprung up these small avionics firms supplying material to the federal government, such as Hewlett Packard and Varian and Fairchild and Honeywell, later on DEC and all sorts of firms. And so one of the critical reasons Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley is this failed program. So, out of the ashes rise this. And amazingly today, Sergey Brin, the founder of Google, along with Larry Page, is building an airship that's about 600 feet long with the Zeppelin Corporation. Zeppelin never went out of business. They've been in business for over 100 years and they're building the world's largest airship again. And it is a sky yacht. He says it's for business. It's actually a sky yacht is what it is. And I think that's tremendous. My kids and I, my sons and I were fortunate enough to fly up and down the California coast in the world's largest airship at the time, about 8 years ago. If you remember, a big white airship flying over Airship Ventures over the Bay Area for about 3 years. And when it flew by the first time, I said, these are my new best friends. And indeed, we became very friendly and we got to use what we call the dead air when they hadn't sold the rights to somebody else. So that was a lot of fun. I'm going to show you now some photos of events. If I can escape this screen. No, I don't know if I can. Here we go. Nope, I don't think I can. Well, we'll stick with this. Some of the stuff is small, it doesn't get noticed much, but this is a model of the Novgorod, which was a Russian ship built in about 1910, and it was completely round. This is a beautiful Swiss-made model. It had cannons on board, and it had 8 engines, all beautifully detailed, but the problem was when you shot the guns, it would start spinning, and they thought the admiral who designed it should spend some time in Siberia, which is where he ended up. But the answer to this ship was, well, that doesn't work, let's build a bigger one. So everything in here has a lot of history. This is a book here that we still sell at Bucks that a friend of mine wrote about our collection. It's the Bucks collection. It was done about 12 years ago, so it's not entirely up to date, but it does chronicle a lot of these stories. Let's go over to this room here. So these people will suddenly leave here. Whoop, they're gone. This piece here is composed of bronze baby shoes. Now, all of us are pretty much too young to remember probably our parents doing our shoes, but we might remember our parents having shoes done as they were kids. This was inspired by the dire wolf exhibit at the La Brea Tar Pits, which is about 100 feet long, a beautiful red light with these skulls, thousands of skulls mounted. So some reason I thought this would be perfect bronze baby shoes. You'd basically send your children's shoes in and they would dip them in bronze or copper and make them into ashtrays and bookends and all sorts of things. And they're remarkably easy to get. There seems to be a great number of them for sale online for almost no money. Here's a little toad playing a piano, for a little background music. This is a fun piece here. This is a painting of the wreck of the Margaret Ann. This is Pigeon Point in, what's the year here? It says it here, in 1871. And if you get close, you see that they're constructing the lighthouse. This is from an actual scene of a ship that ran aground. I've foreshortened the bay. The bay is several miles wide, but for these purposes, we brought it together, and there are horses jumping over, and they're being lassoed on the beach and collected by the cowboys, and they're rowing the goods ashore, and these people are up here watching. And the artist here is painting the painting that you're looking at. So it was probably around 1998 that a woman came in and she said, I'm with Sotheby's, and I think you've got a lot of amazing things here, and they could be worth a lot of money. I said, well, like what? She said, well, this painting you have is obviously a saloon painting from the 1800s, and I bet I would imagine it's quite valuable. And I thought, well, I don't know. This is my dog here, and my dog is still alive. So she thought it was authentic. Later, and her local boyfriend would hate if I mentioned his name, so I won't. But later, she was actually indicted for art fraud and did time. So I like to think that some of my customers are pretty exciting people. Now we're gonna slip on back to the main room here. Oh, here we go. This is a Liberty Bell, and we've seen these Liberty Bells up and down the King's Highway, right? And they originally were installed in early 1900 to commemorate Father Sarah, his trip up establishing the missions. So these were mission bells, and they're originally made of cast iron, and they were there for many years. But then in the 50s, they tended to be stolen a lot. I don't know why they waited so long, but I guess they weren't collectible until they got older. And pretty soon, all the cast iron ones were gone. So then they put them back in concrete, because no one will steal a concrete bell. And then they were quickly stolen. And then they put them back in fiberglass. And I've been up and down the coast a couple of times this year and had noticed that a lot of them are still there. If you start looking for the bells, you'll see they now once more line the King's Highway as they did when many of us were kids. So here's just, you can't really see these photos, but these are people, these are runners. This was a running club. They used to come in and sit in this area here every Wednesday for, I think, 22 years and have their birthdays there and go for their weekly run together as a group. And we got a lot of people, maybe many of yourselves who'd come in regularly. Way over here, there's a Friday group every Friday. This was their booth at noon. Come over here, oh yeah, here's another fun piece. They're Ron and Nancy bedroom slippers, Ronald Reagan and Nancy, and people would often put a menu up and block them, and I couldn't tell whether they were offended because they were Republicans or were offended because they might be Democrats. So, but frequently people didn't want to be stared at by Ron and Nancy here, and they're a great treasure. I bought them at a gas station in Pennsylvania in the 80s. Here is a Braille Playboy. Is such a thing possible? Yes, this is actually a Braille Playboy issued by, it says it right on the cover, by the US government, the Library of Congress. They had been printing Braille Playboys for many, many years. And I, at a conference once, ran into Stevie Wonder, who happens to be blind. And so for some reason, I had it with me at this conference. And then someone said, oh, you got to meet Stevie. He's going to think this is very funny. And I'm thinking, no. And they dragged me over. And sure enough, he felt it. And he said, yeah, I can read this. There's no photographs, of course. It's just text. And then he signed it, which is kind of special because that could have gone either way, right? Here's a photo. This is a photo of, see if I can get it zero in here. This is the first Tesla right here. And next to it is, I think it's called a Squirrel. And this is Lightspeed. And these are two electric car companies that you've never heard of, and Tesla in the middle. Tesla founded at Bucks, and these two other companies sort of went out of business at Bucks. if you're in the computer world, you would find this amusing. This is a Microsoft package of Microsoft Windows, no number, just Windows. And here's a letter from Steve Ballmer saying, we're about to release Windows, and it's we've got all the bugs worked out. It's going to be out in 2 weeks. And then famously, they continued to work on the bugs to this day. And people gave me a lot of wonderful computer stuff. These are early drives here, and this keyboard that folds up. It was a funny story. So this is a folding keyboard. It folds up not much bigger than a wallet, and you unfold it, and you stick your phone device. It would be a Palm Pilot or something here. So I took this out to a table once, and there were a bunch of fellows from LA, and they were in the movie business. And I said, look at this fabulous keyboard. Every book ever written, every book being written, and every book that's going to be written is right on this keyboard. And this little tiny thing. And the one guy was so amazed, he jumped up and he said, can I touch it? I go, well, yeah. So he picks it up and looks at it, flips it over, looks at the back, looks at the front. He goes, well, where are the books? I said, well, I mean that metaphorically. He goes, oh, he hands it back to me. He said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm from LA. But now, ironically, oh, that was 20 years ago. Ironically, we have devices in our pockets that really do have all the books. And so, yeah, who would know? Here's the little early phones. I've got several of these photographs around, and this is a photograph of 25,000 soldiers at a military camp in New Jersey. And they were all lined up to make this image of the Liberty Bell because they canceled the war. World War I ended suddenly, and there were about 100,000 troops across the United States ready to go to war. And so they had to do something to keep busy. So this photographer named Mole went around and he used about an 80-foot tall ladder. And then in front with artificial force shortening, there's only about 25 people in front, but there's maybe 150 people in the back. And then it gives you the perspective that you're looking at there. So I've got several of those around. They're pretty wonderful. People would give me license plates. Apparently these mean something to somebody. Agent 86, that was from Get Smart. And that guy drove around the original car that was in the TV show Get Smart.
Hey, Jamis, quick question. What is the large gelatinous photograph about?
Why, of course, this is San Francisco depicted in Jell-O. It's a photograph of a sculpture of Jell-O. It's maybe 4 feet across, and this Jell-O artist in San Francisco, she's actually quite notable, has done major Jell-O work all over the country. So in the town of Woodside, there is an ordinance that prohibits neon, even if you can see it, even if it's back in the restaurant, if you can see it through the windows, it's illegal to have neon. Now, if you're driven by Bucks, this thing really jumps out at you. It's backlit, and because there's no Jell-O ordinance in the town of Woodside. So am I skirting the law? I don't know. Here's a Google license plate that
Thanks for answering the question.
Sergey Brin came in once and he looked at this license plate and it spells Google. And he looked at me and said, is that real? And I thought I could really mess with him and tell him it is. I said, no, it's not real because he really wanted that plate if it was. Here's some fun stuff. You'd have to be in your 90s to really remember assembling these. These are kids' models that were provided to young boys primarily during the war, and they were just blocks of wood and some instructions and some wheels. And they could be different things, boats, airplanes, and this one from the 50s here, you can't really see it, but it's this one here, the Ranco Hiller. It was called the Hiller Copter. Now, Stanley Hiller of the Hiller Museum came in once and he looked up at this model, and I sort of glued the parts down. I didn't want to assemble it. I just wanted to display it with the parts out. So he looked up at that thing. He said, how did you attach that? I said, well, I just glued it down. And he just shook his head. He said, you know, even I don't have one of those models. I've always tried to get one for the museum. I said, well, sorry, Stanley, you can't have mine. Sweet guy, very engaging. This little couple here has been on the bench here for since the very beginning. Oh, one of our visitors tonight gave me this sign. In fact, a lot of things were given to me by other people. I didn't collect them all or build them all. I did have these chairs built for the bar. There was a Las Vegas casino chair builder, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And they've been incredibly durable. They're over 20 years old, and they've held up beautifully. This dog, we call him Buck. Little kids would come in, they put their arms around him and pose for pictures. Down here on the ground, we've got alligators and lizards, and they carry them to the table and sit with them. In fact, once there was I think it was a dinosaur was here, and my son Tyler was maybe 15, and he said, "Hey, there's somebody taking this dinosaur out to the car and driving away." Some adult decided to pick the dinosaur up and steal it. The kids would never do that. Yeah, this was the first thing I ever installed. These are cereal. This is Cheerios and I think little bits of cereal, just a little bit of whimsy. And up here, this is fun. This is a model of the Macon. I built this 20 some years ago, and I thought I might build it as a flying model, but it was a little too heavy, and that's when I got into lighter than air. Up here in the sky, we've got this here. This is the bottom of a training module used to train Ham the chimpanzee to go into outer space. So on the other side, you can't see it because it's photographed from below. There's a stuffed chimpanzee in there, and this was actually built by the U.S. Air Force. And there are little controls, and if you look online for Ham the chimpanzee, you'll see him in this training chair moving these levers. They sent the chimps up and got them back before they sent people, because they didn't know, if your brain would explode or whatever. We just knew so little about outer space until we grew up. Here's a fun piece. There's little tricks all over. This is a helicopter with a Navy wave, Navy wave, woman Navy officer falling out, and someone just gave me this helicopter and I hung it up. A lot of stuff was just given to me, like this race car. Now this car was in a race we had called the Sand Hill Challenge in the 90s. From 95 to 2000, we closed Sand Hill Road, and we enlisted a lot of the venture capitalists and design wackos and car firms and stuff to build these magnificent cars. I had this idea we could close the road off, invite thousands of people, build these crazy cars, and raise a lot of money for charity, which we did. We went for 5 years, and we raised about $300,000 for various youth programs. We got the high school football team to set up hay bales, and we raced these cars down the road. This was the fastest gravity-powered car in the world. This was basically a soapbox derby car. So in our second year, we were using the term soapbox. I got a call from a guy. He said, "So are you using the term soapbox in your promotion?" I said, "Yeah, we are." He said, "Well, that is a copywritten term." And I said, "Oh, dear." He said, "But we want you to use it. We want to send you a letter giving you permission to use it, because we think your race is promoting soapbox derby racing. So we're all behind you. Go ahead and do it." And that was so great. Instead of somebody calling you up and trying to sue you, they call up and want to support you. So I want to show you this piece. This is kind of a sweet piece here, if I can find my way over there. This is a house up here in the dark. This is a builder's model from maybe 100 years ago of a typical Pasadena bungalow. And we have a little sign, Woodside property so expensive for rent, $1,600, parking included. And underneath, of course, is the witch with her curled up toes there. Here's part of the mural poking through small town America, and the woman with pearls on her head again. This is a fun piece here. These are Willie the lion's hip bones. Willie lived at the Wattell estate down at the foot of the hill here, where Mike Markle lives today. So Mike told me that he had a giraffe bone that he was going to give me. And I go, "Great, we'll put that up." He comes in and gives me this stuff. I go, "What's this?" He said, "Well, we couldn't find the giraffe, but we found Willie's grave, and these are his hip bones." And Willie was a very famous lion who was part of Frank Buck's traveling show where he had the most number of lions and tigers in a cage with one guy. I think it was 26 or 29 cats in the cage with him. And Willie was one of them. And when Willie got older, George Wattell, who owned this big estate in Woodside, had a menagerie, including an elephant and a lion. The elephant met his demise rather painfully, I guess, in an airplane crash. It's the only elephant we know of that was killed in an airplane crash. It was a small elephant. It was what they call a forest elephant from Africa. There's three kinds of elephants. There's the African elephant, the Indian elephant, and the little forest elephant. It was about 8 feet tall. And it was in his DC-3, and it was being flown up to a kids' party at Lake Tahoe because he owned much of the shoreline of Lake Tahoe, and the plane went down, and the elephant with it. There's a lesson there. I don't know what the lesson is. Something about elephants and airplanes. But these, Wattell was also a great collector of Duesenbergs. So he was known to pull up in front of what's now Roberts. It was then Newman's store with Willie in the back seat. And there's a full-grown African lion with the mane and everything. And he'd go into the store and there'd be this lion sitting there. So I want to see, Tyler, if you can come up here and we're going to do a different screen share. He's going to pop up here because I have a couple of photographs. I happen to have one of the viewers here on site. So Tyler, can you get me back to my home screen here? We'll just finish with a few of those. Okay, I want to get to my desktop. Here we go. This is great.
Okay, you're not sharing it.
Okay, yeah, share. Go ahead. Okay, and then blow that up. Great, great. Thank you, Tyler. And so some of the fun events. Here's the Russian generals that came in. This is our local Deborah Gordon, who was working for many years Bill Perry, the Secretary of Defense, and this is General Ivashov here. They all look unhappy. They're always smoking. They go outside and smoke. They're wearing these baggy blue jeans, which was all kind of cute. Let's see what else we have here. Once the Declaration of Independence showed up. This is one of the 14 copies that are known to exist, and this fella brought it from Sotheby's, and the owner bought it at for $1 million, and it was the most expensive item ever sold online at the time, which is 1998 perhaps. It sold for $7 million. The previous owner bought it for $4. It was stuck in the back of a frame with some picture in it and got it at a garage sale in Vermont. And so he sold it for $1 million and got to keep the frame. And then the Sotheby's people were reluctant to bring it down because it's like, oh, what's this restaurant? And then they looked into it and it was bucks, and they got a lot of news coverage. And then it ended up selling for that terrific amount. And it was Norman Lear who bought it, and he happened to see it from a newscast that they shot here. He runs People for the American Way, and Tyler, I'm frozen up here. And so it was really delightful that he was able to, oh, here we go. Now I got it here. So some of the characters that would come in here, Tyler's running up downstairs. My friend Frank.
Good,
Now,
good exercise.
Frank used to come in every week, and he always ordered strawberry ice cream, and he had it on everything. He had it on Caesar salad. This is Frank eating his onion soup with a scoop of strawberry ice cream. He'd order a steak and put strawberry ice cream on it. And I don't think I've ever seen that before or since. Just a wonderful, wonderful way to experience life. Oh, one of the things I forgot to show you back in the other one, but I'm going to show you here, just this photograph, is this is Steve Wozniak. Now, over in a frame to the right, this Apple One is in the frame. Now, the Apple One sells today for $800,000 to $1 million. Well, Andy Rubin had this kicking around his house, and he thought it should be on display at Bucks. And there I am thinking, this is a really good idea. And then Wozniak came in and signed it, probably making it worth another 100,000. In 2 weeks, there's one coming up to auction in its original box. never been hooked up. So it's the rarest of the rare, and they're predicting over $1 million. Now, this does belong to Andy. Let me say it publicly, but he's loaned it to us. It is not presently in bucks because it's so incredibly valuable. It's in a vault over here, but it's hidden away. And above Wozniak's head over here is a picture of Steve Jobs that just happened to be on the wall, and the Apple I showed up. Now, this is Steve Jobs in Groucho glasses. And of course, Wozniak was always second fiddle. And there's Steve still looking over his shoulder. In fact, I used to work for Steve Jobs back in 79 and 80 when I was a home remodeling contractor. He was my second customer ever. And we had this new baby at home, and he came to the house with his girlfriend once. Gosh, that was 40 years ago. And we were trying to pick names, and his girlfriend said, "How about Tyler or Taylor?" And we picked Tyler, and that's the 40-year-old Tyler who's here.
Now I help you with your computer.
And now he helps me with my computer, my Apple computer, which is darn funny. How do I get back there? No. Oh, there we go. And we might have a couple more here. Here's me taking some lobsters to lunch. We got these giant lobsters. They were alive, and they had a really good time. And then later that evening, not so much. Picture of the Sandhill Challenge. This is where we closed Sandhill Road, and had a gale time. So these cars, they were incredibly fast, and they were incredibly dangerous. A lot of people went to the hospital because they either fainted from the heat or their cars crashed. One of the drivers was thrown out through the plexiglass when he hit the hay bales down below because he couldn't see the end of the race course. And so he was pitched out. He was driving a racing shark. It was actually a mako shark with sharp teeth, and it raked his face, and he was all bloody, but he was loving it. The good old days, right? When you could send people to the hospital and not get sued. Oh, and a couple more pictures here. I know our time is drawing nigh. I'm talking pretty fast, but I thought for many years that I made this story up, that I arm wrestled Mike Tyson. I had it in the back of my mind that somehow I arm wrestled him, and then I sort of forgot. And then I thought, did I make that up? And then I came across this photograph, my much younger days. Now, I'm a pretty big guy, and maybe Mike thought, I'd put up more resistance, but the bill with his group was about $150. I said, "I'll wrestle you for the bill," and he was very gracious. This was actually in his extreme hostile phase when he was biting people's ears off. So the fact that he was willing to cooperate so nicely, I thought was great. It was really worth that much. He just had a fight last week too, at the age of whatever, 56 or something, and it was just a sort of a little poking match. But here I clearly lost. His fight last week was a draw. I might have one more picture here to show you our founder. Yeah, this is just sort of the wacky stuff that I come across. This is just a photograph of one of the shrunken men. There are two shrunken men that are owned by the American Indian Museum in Washington, D.C., and they used to be on display. I remember seeing these back in the 70s, and they were actually shrunken by South American Indians, like shrunken heads, but these were the whole bodies. There's only two of these known to exist, and this is one of them. And it's, of course, next to the Apple I, the most coveted collectible of all time, and they weren't willing to part with it. But I did get the spacesuit, and I did get all you wonderful customers over the years. And Margaret and I have been so blessed with having you come in and bringing your kids in and growing old and going through the whole adventure with us. I thought when I was in high school that I wanted a job where I could just wander around meeting amazing people, and that would be my job. And that was my career, and Margaret's brilliant support with really all the hard work in the background. Largely, although she did run the floor for many years, made us just really grateful. And now we're in the grandchild business, which is just as gratifying. I'm sort of done talking about venture capital and the latest app, and just trying to learn the latest dance steps from a 3-year-old. And I think that's probably as much as anyone can absorb in an evening. I would ask for questions, but that's probably not possible here. What's the future bring, you might ask? Well, my kids founded several restaurants in San Francisco, and they're still open-ish, and oh, there I am. And Bucks is open now for outdoor seating. We've got this amazing weather we're taking advantage of. What the next couple of months brings, oh, there's Mark. What the next couple of months bring is anybody's guess, but it looks like we're going to get on the other side of this, and Bucks will be open again and thriving, and you may see me walking around hoisting me a cup of coffee, and finally I get to eat for free. I remember years ago I was taking a half a gallon of milk home, and Margaret said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm stealing a half a gallon of milk." She said, "You never steal anything. You pay for everything you take from this restaurant." I go, "You're right, I do. Oh, you're right." But now that the kids are really doing it, I can start to steal big time.
All right, Jamis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm sure everyone enjoyed all the things you had to share with us. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
sure. And
Thank
so I'll see you again at 28 years from now, and we'll compare notes. And there's Mark there. Not like Mark, were you here when I told the story about you? Oh, well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was here from the beginning.
Yeah. And so, and that's so true. Can I still get that $50,000 piece of Tesla? Is that still available?
You could buy like 5 shares now on the open market.
Too much. Well, he's one of our great talent characters. And there's Kelly up there, old friend, and so many of you. So I'm going to sign off, and there's Jim Wickett, old friend from the Hill here. And I just cherish you all so much. And I can't see too many of you, but I know you're out there, and I love you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jamis.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jamis.
Over and out.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.